Alright, let's get started. So we're going to be setting up Nasdaq. Let's start off by zooming out into the 1 day. Can you mute yourself, please? Alright, thank you. Alright, so we're going to start off by setting up our charting on Nasdaq. At first thing we're going to do is take a look at the overall sentiment of Nasdaq and try to get an idea of what's getting ready to happen. So we realize that we have untested support down here that will at some point buy Nasdaq, kind of like it did over here, try to come back and test these areas. We haven't quite reached any significant position or notifier that there's going to be a reversal just yet to this area, so we could probably assume that the overall sentiment, at least as far as the day candles are concerned, that a majority of the movement is going to be looking upward. If we go down into, we can look at the 4 hours, see if we see anything here. This is generally where I like to set up my overall trend lines. So we're going to get a zone here similar to a way that a swing trader would by using these rays. And we're going to pick the bottom here, kind of come through this zone here. And then I like to make these larger ones gold because these are my dominant trend lines. And then I'm going to take this top here and kind of go through the top right here, touching these 3 points. And then we have a nice rectangular area. And I think if I adjust this a little bit better, it'll be slightly more rectangular. Still touching all 3 points. And then just to add an additional, let's get that right there, just to add an additional, make sure that's touching right there. We will see these things bounce off of. You can kind of imagine the line right here. I'm going to go ahead and add a line right through the middle, which is starting from this middle point. This is kind of the middle here, going to these middle points right here, and that should split this graph pretty evenly. You can see already, let's use this high point right there. You can see already it almost perfectly divides the overall trend area and where these bounce points are. And we're going to go ahead and use, just to add a more even divide here, and you can see where they're trying to break through here and then getting wicked back down. So that adds kind of greater detail as to why these wick down right in this area. Obviously the resistance and support, however, we'll notice how this line will continuously get respected. So going into smaller time zones, I generally like to do the 1 hour just to see if there's anything different that I notice, and there isn't anything really. Let me try to get more of the average of these tops right here, but I think we're in a good position. So just making sure my lines still look good. And you can see from right here, so we had, as I zoom out a little bit, let's fix this chart. There we go. So we had a major drop off right here from what I like to call M tops. So we have this M formation right here, which generally will signify kind of the same thing that a head and shoulders does. When we get these head and shoulders right here, we get this flat top and it'll generally start coming down. A lot of times you'll see we'll get these M's, and then what happens? Boom. So in the same context, if you look at this alternatively, we have a big W right here. And these W's will generally signify, especially when the W's only signify this when they're coming from a drop. So we'll get a big drop, and then we get this W that forms that signifies or lets us know that we're about to bounce up most likely to a new high. The other thing that we look for is, I call it the 1, 2, 3 bounce. So we'll get, like right here, we have our low, we have a higher low, and then a higher low, and then it bounces up just after that. Okay. Now, what determines whether or not this is going to break through that high is if whether or not this high has been tested before. So if it hasn't been tested yet, what we've noticed just looking back over and over and over again is right around here, this one broke, but we do have a 1, 2, 3 bounce here. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then a bounce up. But this was already breaking past this level. It tested this area, so it had an easier push going into the next area, and got caught here, which was the untested support, right? So this was the drop. Boom, boom, boom. Got caught under it, just below it, came back down, and then added another 1, 2, 3 bounce, going back to test this upper level before doing another 1, 2, 3 bounce and breaking through. Okay, and then same here, big drop, big W, break through, test the untested support, come back down, test the untested support, and then you even have these little tiny 1, 2, 3, and a 4th bounce to break the new high. Okay. So moving forward, so if we're looking at this at a swing trade perspective, we can see it bounced up and down through the zone, broke through, and then was kind of bouncing in this zone, and we're just breaking through right now to this next zone. So we can imagine it's now finally testing the support. We're probably going to bounce back, come back down through this. This is going to be a bit of a fake out in my assumption. Come back down through this, come retest these support, or this resistance, I'm sorry, and then come retest these support areas, and making that third 1, 2. So this is not a third area right here because this is coming from the top. We want a kind of a long drop like this, and it's going to be 1, 2, and this is going to come give us our third bounce before we come break that high. So that's what we're going to be looking out for today. It looks like it's just bouncing off the top right here. At any moment, any of the speculation, we could be wrong, and the market could always do whatever the heck it wants to do. So this could absolutely break through, bounce off this line, and then maybe come back down, or maybe not. But this is generally how it works, as we've seen. 1, 2, 3, come test it, come back down, and then boom, start breaking that high, right? Starts to break that high. So let's get into the 15-minute, and this is where we start the rest of our chart setup. So what I like to do is I like to pick the previous low. We'll do the previous low. And this is, you can choose different lows, but I generally like to, and we can play with it, but let's go with this one, and then we come to the new high. This is our fib retracement. We come to this high, right? And then you can see we get a clean readout. This is where this bounced off of, right? We have hit points. We have kind of hit points here, hit points here, hit points here. We have like a little bit consolidation areas. But I'm not necessarily getting all the information that I would like because I kind of want to see where these are bouncing off of. So what I started doing is the same thing in reverse. So we have one line going this way. Now I'm going to have, mind you, we have these invisible fib, or these perforated fib trend lines here. And so I'm going to come down to here, and I'm going to pick the latest low. And as you can see, now we have these intermittent areas where we're getting these bounces and we're getting clean reads on where these zones are, right? So we have these bounce zones here, and we're bouncing off of these lines, we're bouncing off the trend. So now we have a better perception of what is possible, and I'm going to have this kind of come cleaner, touch this area. And we'll do this to just come cleaner, touch this area. And so now we have a better idea of kind of what's possible, right? And then we'll get this to touch all three zones right here. Boom, 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 boom. And we'll start seeing where these, on a left to right and up and down scale, where these resistance and trends are going to be. And then this is what I call this an anti-trend line. So this anti-trend line is, it's this invisible downward trend that just kind of gets respected. And you'll notice, let's get my zone here. You'll notice that from here, you'll start seeing these downward movements, and they're kind of following this line. They kind of start following this line. They follow this line. And even though the majority trend is coming up this way, somehow this anti-trend line is being respected coming downward this way. So,
Hey,
yeah.
Hey, real quick, sorry. So when you did your fib on TradeView, when you did your inverted fib, how did you get to that?
So all I did was, I did one from the low to the high, and then I did one from the high to the low. So this one.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't actually invert this thing.
So it inverts the line. So you're basically, if I'm doing it from the low to the high, I have this trend line moving up this way. But if I'm doing it high to low, now I have a trend line going this way. And
okay, so I still click fib. I'm just reversing it myself when I'm clicking on my screen.
It's just how you set it up. Yep, exactly.
Okay,
So it reverses yourself based on how you set it up on your screen. So what I used to do is actually, and you'll notice my blue zone now it goes up. So I get a detailed reading going upwards now of projection going upwards. So you see now I have this down area here. Oops. So I have this down area where where my chart's going down. Can you mute yourself, please? And then I have this up area of Fibonacci zones of bullish movement, right? So I have my bearish movement coming down this area, and then I have my bullish movement coming up here. So we'll get this back to where it was, which is right here. Boom. And that was our zone. Now we're touching here. And I need to zoom in. Yeah, it sounded like you were going through a wind tunnel. So.
Yeah, I got my fan on me. I forgot to mute it when I was doing the inverted. Sorry.
No worries. So, get that to touch the top right there. Get this to touch the top. Just kind of want to get as accurate of a reading as possible. And then look, pink. All right, pink. So.